by the chair of the Democratic Party, Tom Perez, who joins us from Brownsville, Texas. Tom, good morning. How are you, man?
Mark, it's an honor to be with you and your listeners again
Um,
during this dark stage in our nation's journey to form a more perfect union.
I have a surprise for you, too, Tom. Who just walked in the studio is with us is the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Oh, my gosh. What an honor. I just stood up when you said that, quite literally. What an honor to be with Reverend Jackson.
November 6th.
One of the moral leaders of our time.
November 6th countdown day. November 6th.
Yeah, that's
131 days till the election. And when I see what happened yesterday, Reverend Jackson and Mark, when I see what's happening down here in Brownsville, when I see what this administration has done to dreamers, when I see what they've done to working people, when I see their effort to undo health care, the best remedy I can think of is to make sure everybody votes.
Yeah.
That is our best remedy. We have no check or balance in the courts anymore. We've seen that through the decisions of the last 2 weeks on gerrymandering, on the Muslim ban, on labor rights, on women's reproductive health. We have no check or balance in the Congress. The Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, is dead. It's been replaced by the party of Trump, and we have to organize, mobilize, vote, and take over the Senate, the House, and state houses. That's what we're doing at the DNC.
Tom, this is not the part of Lincoln. This is the part of Jefferson Davis and Reagan,
Exactly.
Reagan and
Yeah.
Goldwater.
Yeah.
The what was then Southern Democrats were the Southern Jefferson Davisites, and what was then Lincoln Republicans became Kennedy Johnson Democrats. So the big switch took place. They're not the part of Lincoln.
Well, you mentioned Ronald Reagan. Frankly, I'm guessing that Ronald Reagan is turning over in his grave. We did an immigration bill in 1986 when he was president, and he understood that immigrants were part of our nation's fabric. He understood that Russia was actually an enemy to be dealt with, and then you look at this president who's Putin's poodle. Even Ronald Reagan must be shaking his head now in his grave.
Tom, I'm concerned that we use this moment. Those who vote recently tend to vote. So, for example, we want all college students to register and vote where they actually attend school. They're not going to leave school and go home to vote. They have the right residential registration, A. B, those who are fighting about the gun battles this year, 17 to 21 years of age, they have the right to register and vote this year. There are more 17 to 21 than there are 71 to 81. They can vote. And then there are 4 million blacks in the South unregistered, 4 million. And I suspect a number of them have literacy issues, Tom, and I would like to think that pal to the poll, you actually can take someone to the poll with you when you go and vote and give the extra blanket of security. So we're going to put a lot of focus, Rainbow is, on voter registration, voter registration, voter registration.
Yeah.
Amen. Our signature issue, Reverend Jackson and Mark, for 2018 is a very simple concept. I will vote.
Yeah.
Our goal is to touch 50 million people. That's an audacious goal, but we've got a lot of partners. And the goal is to get them to commit to vote, commit to register to vote, commit to protect the vote, because we know about voter suppression all too well, and then commit to get out the vote. And many of the organizers that we've been placing on the ground, we've been putting at or near college campuses, because we saw in Virginia last year, and we saw in our work with Doug Jones, when you have a full-time organizer on a college campus, we had organizers on HBCU campuses in Alabama. We had organizers at the University of Alabama. That's lightning in a bottle. Young people are starting to awaken to the reality that this president is just absolutely anathema to their values, and that democracy can't be a spectator sport. The millennial generation is the number one voting bloc now, as you know, in America, and they share our values, but we've got to make sure that they're out there voting.
Tom, I remember speaking to the University of Alabama last fall, about a couple of thousand people, and asked how many of you were for, Doug Jones against Roy Moore, and they all stood and cheered. How many of you registered to vote in Tuscaloosa, and only a handful stood. They did not go back home to vote.
Right.
They were cheering for the right guy. They were not voting for. So students have the right of residency. That's a big deal. The same small towns that want you to buy goods and service don't want you to vote there. You have the right to vote in the small town that your school is in.
That's right. And make a difference right there. And so we can not only flip the house, and as you said, Tom, Perez with us, folks, 1/4 hour, Reverend Jackson with us as well. As you said, Tom, the importance of winning back the Senate. You as we opened, Tom, you said 131 days. Isn't 100 by that same standard? Isn't 131 days too soon before an election to confirm a Supreme Court nominee, Tom Perez? Isn't that the rule?
It should be, and to use the standard that Mitch McConnell articulated in 2016, you shouldn't have a nomination hearing in an election year. That's not Tom Perez's words; those were Mitch McConnell's words in 2016.
Yeah.
But you know they're going to try and ram one through, and we're going to be fighting like heck, and we're going to be. Yeah, a woman's right to choose is at stake. You've already seen the attacks on voting rights by the existing court, and now they have an additional reinforcement. Some of the basic bedrock protections that we've taken for granted for decades are at risk. This is a where were you moment in our nation's history, and that's why it's so critically important to do everything that Reverend Jackson and you and we have been outlining. We have to have turnout unlike anything we've seen before, and we've got to understand that for Republicans, their goal is to make it harder for eligible people to vote, not easier. And we've seen two Supreme Court decisions.
So WikiLeaks is tough, but TrickyLeaks even worse. Republicans engage in TrickyLeaks, always some scheme to undermine the vote. We were down at Winston-Salem State University last fall, and it was 16, I guess it was now, 7,000 people, students and teachers and community people there rallying. And they moved the precinct from the student union hall to 3 miles down the road. That's TrickyLeaks, you know.
Right.
It seemed.
And you look right, and you North Carolina 2016 was another example. The number of early voting days was dramatically reduced by the Republicans there because there was also a gubernatorial election, and God forbid that they wanted to let people get out to vote. Many of the sites that were eliminated were sites where you had heavy concentrations of communities of color. And now you have a roadmap for voter purges from the Supreme Court decision of a couple weeks ago. And I know a lot about that because I took on Florida. I took on Ohio. I took on a lot of people when I ran the Civil Rights Division. They are trying to make it harder for eligible people to vote. That is quintessentially un-American in addition to being illegal and immoral. But we've got to make sure that all of your listeners are out there. I hope everyone talks to 20 people, gets them out to vote. That's the force multiplier because they're counting on us. They're counting on a lot of Democrats just sitting home, and we're having nothing of that.
Tom, I think it's important you let people know that you held that position in the Civil Rights Department because you're not just a DNC guy. You bring a tremendous amount of experience and acumen to this agenda, which gives you an extra leg up on.
He's an activist. He's been a civil rights attorney and activist.
I mean, how do you win Virginia by 200,000, lose by 1? How do you win the president's campaign by 3 million and then lose?
Yeah.
And so the rules matter.
Yeah. No question about it.
Rules matter. Absolutely. And, I took on Texas with their voter ID law, which was actually the worst in the land. You can have a concealed carry license as an eligible identification card, but your license, your identification from Texas Southern University or the University of Texas is not a permissible form of identification. What's that about? That's about making sure young people can't vote. That's wrong. And our best remedy right now is organize. And I talk to Eric Holder with regularity. The redistricting commission is using their muscle and flexing their muscle to make sure they're out there protecting the right to vote. But we just can't have anybody sitting on the sidelines. I ran for this position because I think this is one of those real inflection points in American history. And it's not the first time we've fallen off the rails in our nation's history, and we've gotten back on the rails when people like Reverend Jackson stood up and led the masses, and we've got to continue to do that again. I think we can. I think people understand we need a check and balance on this president. We're not getting it from the courts. We're not getting it from Republicans. We've got to simply elect more Democrats, not simply in Washington, but in state houses and mayor's offices and state legislatures across the country. That's what happens when Washington State a few months ago, they had a special election for a state Senate seat. We invested in it, and we elected a Democrat there, a woman named Marka Dingra, and that flipped the state Senate. And literally a few months later, they passed a sweeping set of voting rights reforms, early voting, automatic voter registration, things that have been stymied by the Republicans. Elections matter. Medicaid expansion just passed in Virginia. Hundreds of thousands of low-income people finally getting access to health care. That's because we elected more Democrats last year. And that's what we got to do.
Well, Tom Perez with us, folks, 20 minutes past hour, Reverend Jesse Jackson in the studio. Tom, the other thing I think that needs to be emphasized, I've been saying, and I hope you'll say it too, is, some of the punditry is trying to make Alexandria's win even as a knock against the party. But my argument is she ran in the party. She won in the party. She couldn't have won as a Republican. That just further shows how big the tent of the party is. If you're progressive, or if you want to call yourself a Bernie person, the only place to run is within the Democratic Party. That shows how big big the party is, right?
When I ran in 84 and 88, my mission was to expand the party.
Right.
Not to break it, but to expand it with more voter registration. And by expanding, we changed the rules, made the rules more fair, and got more people involved.
Indeed. But isn't that true, Tyler? I mean, she ran in the party. That's a good sign for the party.
And if you look at what she said yesterday, Mark, she said, "I'm proud to be a Democrat."
Good. Right.
It's impossible not to be anything but amazed by the race that she ran and the enthusiasm she brings and the passion that she exudes. I have great respect for Joe Crowley as well. He has had a distinguished career in public service. He's a great Democrat, and so is she. And her election reflects a changing demographic profile of that community, and her election reflects the fact that she worked her tail off. And I get asked a lot of times about questions like that. I think we are a big tent, and it's really important for us never to confuse unity and unanimity. We've been winning elections because we've been united. Now, that doesn't mean that someone has to agree with everything I say, but what we've been able to win around is the fact that what unites us far exceeds what our differences are. Democrats believe that health care is a right for all, not a privilege for a few. We believe that every human being should be treated with dignity. We believe in a woman's right to choose. We believe that voting rights are sacred. These are sacrosanct. We believe that the Secretary of Education ought to believe in public education, and the EPA administrator ought to understand something about climate change. And we believe in facts and science.
Yeah.
And that's why we've been winning, because our unity is our greatest strength, and that's why I'm excited for her. I think Alexandria brought an energy to the enterprise that is infectious, and we've seen this in a number of victories across the country.
If he would campaign for her passionately, that's the real measure of his character. He cannot just pout and feel brokenhearted. He has to campaign for her with passion, and that's a big deal. If he does that, it ensures us keeping the seat in the general election. Yeah. Because if he does not do that, there are some who will drop off.
Well, I think he said he's going to do that.
He must. He
is absolutely. Joe Crowley's a stand-up guy, and when he realized it wasn't going to be there for him, I don't know if you saw what he did. He plays the guitar, and he sang as a tribute to her Bruce Springsteen's "Born to Run."
That's right. He did.
That's the kind of guy he is, and that's why I'm proud to be a Democrat, and that's why I'm proud to be on this show with Reverend Jackson, because so many of the reforms that I see today in the Democratic National Committee that have opened up the party, quite frankly, so many of them date back to 1988 with Reverend Jackson. A number of them date back with Ron Brown, one of my distinguished predecessors. And I'm out there right now, and this isn't about the past, who you supported in 2016. This is about the future. This is about making sure we fight for good jobs. We fight for health care. We fight for women's reproductive health. We fight for immigrants. We fight for people seeking a second chance. We fight, quite frankly, for our democracy, because our democracy is at risk right now. We have a president far more comfortable spending time with autocratic leaders than he is spending the time with democratic leaders.
As a matter of fact,
he's
Tom,
a strong man.
As a matter of fact, Tom, we've got some breaking news. It's just been announced that
this is MIP Breaking News.
The summit with Putin has been set for July 16th in Finland. So the very country he's under investigation for colluding with, he's going to go ahead and have a summit with him, Tom Perez. I think that's a historic first.
Well, it just speaks volumes to the fact that Canada is the new enemy in the world of Donald Trump, and Germany is the new enemy, and our Mexico is the new enemy, and Russia is our friend.
Yeah.
So I saw we sued the Trump campaign. We sued the Russian government. We sued them because the Russian government, the Trump campaign, colluded to in the 2016 election to turn the election, and I'm confident we will prove that in a court of law.
Tom, at what point do we focus on fair rules? For example, when Bush went up 537 votes, 27,000 black votes in Devere County were not counted. Gore won but lost. Clinton won by 3 million votes, and yet she lost. At what point do we deal with the issue of these Confederate rules?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I have been an advocate of for a long time, and this isn't something that's going to get fixed in the short term, but it's something we need to continue to fight for, is there have been a number of states that have passed laws on the Electoral College, so that, for instance, the first state to do it is my home state of Maryland. Mm-hmm. Maryland has passed a law that says the electors will vote in the Electoral College for the person who won the popular vote. We had Al Gore, who won the popular vote, lost the election. We now had the same thing happen with Hillary Clinton. It's going to continue to happen, and I think we should be respecting the will of the people.
Right.
And that's why it's called the National Popular Vote Compact. There's a number of states that equal up to almost 200 electoral votes who have agreed to do this. We've got to get more states to do it because it takes 270 electoral votes to win.
The reason I raised this issue,
one of our long-term strategies.
The issue about fair rules was, in the case of 1965, what made a difference was the federally protected right to vote for the first time in 100 years. Then in Shelby, they decapitated that ruling.
Absolutely.
And therefore, their next step was not just quote-unquote race, but gerrymandering. So you end up winning and losing because they have unjust rules. I think we got to make the rules case too, Tom.
Tom, just one other point, because I know we're short on time. In terms of rules, you all, I think, voted last night, or a committee voted to go before the full DNC to change the superdelegate rules too, right?
That's correct. And what we did, what we're trying to do at the DNC, we're rebuilding our political infrastructure, but we also, equally importantly, Mark and Reverend Jackson, we got to rebuild trust. And in the eyes of many, a superdelegate was someone who had unsized and unfair power, whether it was a perception or a reality. It was an issue for a lot of people. And so what a committee of the DNC did yesterday was to say that in the first round of balloting for president, the so-called superdelegates will not be permitted to cast a vote unless the outcome has already been determined. And so what that means is that we're really returning, we're ensuring, I should say, that power will rest with the people who are casting the votes. And I think that's really important moving forward as we make sure we've got so many young people out there who share our values but are not necessarily registered Democrats. And we've got to send a message to them that this is their home and we hear their concerns. And so this is another example of action that we're taking to make sure that people come into the Democratic fold.
Lastly, Tom, you're in Brownsville, Texas today, right? Tell us what's the latest down there, if you would.
Well, we're seeing the ramifications of the latest manufactured crisis from this administration. Children being stolen from their parents, taken away from their parents by an illegal and unconscionable and immoral practice of separating children from their parents. And Brownsville, quite frankly, is a ground zero in what's happening here. This policy, again, it's illegal, it's immoral, it's appalling,
right.
and it was manufactured. The president manufactured this crisis with dreamers. He's manufactured this crisis with children. He's constantly dividing, and we're here to say this is a basic violation of human rights, and we're here to continue to advocate and be a voice for those children. I can't imagine, as a parent of three, if one of my children had been taken away from me, I just can't imagine how I would feel. This harkens back to some of the darkest moments in American history, and I think it's so important for us to be here to give voice to these children, because we believe that compassion should never be a four-letter word. We think that families belong together, that children belong in classrooms, not cages, and dreamers belong in our democracy, not on a deportation bus. And
that's right.
And that's why we're down here fighting, Mark. This crisis continues, but the problem and challenge we have in this world is that every 4 hours there's some additional outrageous thing being done by this administration. And I want to make sure that the voices of these children are constantly heard and they're not muted.
Yeah, indeed. Tom Perez, folks, go to iwillvote.com. As we've been talking with Voting with Tom and Reverend Jackson, go to iwillvote.com because you can find out if your registration is current there, and there's no monkey business. Do that today. Tom's in Brownsville. We appreciate you, Tom, as always. Tom, just before we let you go, we'll do a little overlap here so you can say hello to our next guest. I know you're as concerned, Tom, about the Janus case as we are. And as Tom Perez, the chair of the Democratic Party, leaves us, Tom, please join us in saying good morning to the president of SEIU to talk about the Janus case, Mary Kay Henry. Tom, she's on the line with us right now.
Well, Mary
I'm glad
Kay Henry
to join,
is one
brothers.
of the not just the labor movement, but the movement for justice across America. And when you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that's what this administration wants to do to working people. But with leaders like Mary Kay Henry and Lee Saunders and Randy Weingarten and Lily Eskelin, I know we're going to fight back. And we're always going to have their back because Mary Kay is a superstar in the movement.
Well, if you don't vote, you're like a turkey organizing Thanksgiving dinner.
Good morning to my brothers Tom Perez, to Mark Thompson, and to my brother Reverend Jesse Jackson. Good to be in community today.
Good to see you marching the Poor People's Campaign rally on this past Saturday.
Oh yeah, the Poor People's Campaign. That was there. That was great. Hey Tom, too. Also, before you go, you mentioned your home state of Maryland. Congratulations to your friend and mine, Ben Jealous, winning that primary. We look forward to supporting him in November.
I'll be with him on Saturday in Baltimore at a rally.
Wonderful. Tom, we'll let you go, man, but pardon me, but thank you for being here, Tom, okay?
Oh, it's an honor to be with all of you, and we're going to keep fighting for workers. We're going to keep fighting for children. We're going to keep fighting for women. We're going to keep fighting for everybody in need of opportunity.
Tom Perez, folks. Thank you, Tom. Love you, brother, okay? And we'll talk again real soon. Take care. Mary Kay Henry, I'm sorry, I'm coughing.
That's okay.
But Mary Kay, we love you too. What in the world are we going to do about this Janice decision, Mary Kay?
Good question. We're going to do what our ancestors did, which is we're going to get up this morning, go to work, talk to our family, friends, and coworkers about how much we need each other in this time, that it's not just the Janice decision that I think we're reeling from. It's what you all were just talking about in terms of what's happening in Brownsville, Texas, and all along the border. It's what's happening to voting rights that Reverend Jesse Jackson has stood up for his whole life. It's what's happening to reproductive health. It's been an amazing week. And I think when I dealt with leaders throughout SEIU yesterday, Mark, they doubled down on building a strong union that can link arms and fight to make sure that everybody has a right to vote in this country, everybody has a right to clean air and clean water, and everybody has a right to expect a fair shot and equal opportunity in this country. And we think our contribution to that is by throwing the doors of our union open and making sure that workers have a right to organize and join unions so we can be part of these other fights.
So the real issue at this hour is the court is saying that in order for non-union members, in other words, non-union members no longer have to make an automatic contribution to the union. If they want to make a contribution, they must be full-fledged members. That's the challenge before us now, right, Mary Kay?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So what we found, Mark, is that when people have conversations with each other, either in their workplace or if they work at home, they talk to each other in their neighborhoods, that they pledge to each other that they're going to invest in the union in order to help improve their wages and create good jobs, and also have a fight for justice on so many fronts that we were just talking about. Yeah. So we've actually found it a time when we can strengthen the inside of our union and increase the number of non-union workers that join, because I think you've seen all over this country, we were standing with the Poor People's Campaign last Saturday that united the fight against systemic racism with the fight against systemic poverty and ecological devastation and the military war budget.
Right.
And so we want to be a part of the bigger fight, and our members see their union as a vehicle for that.
I want workers to join the union. You know, Dr. King, if you celebrate his birthday and extol the virtues upon his life, his last fight was for workers to have the right to collectively bargain and receive benefits. Now, it seems to me if you're working and receive benefits and don't pay, you're being dishonest. And I can foresee workplace tension over you benefit from an 8-hour work day, benefit from job safety, but you don't want to pay your dues. Workers must not go for that divisive scheme.
That's exactly right, Reverend Jackson. And that divisive scheme, has its roots in the right to work law, has its roots in trying to separate white and black workers from each other in Texas, and we've talked about that inside our union, and the ability to unite across race is a really important fight that we need to have at this time. And
but separate workers from workers. About half of America now makes less than $15 an hour. Yeah. Another half maybe less than $10 an hour. And so the idea that if I don't have to pay union dues, I'll be better off. The fact is, you'll be worse off, because if you lose your rights, a combination of Citizens United where the rich can buy your district, and gerrymandering and cutting your ability to make wages, that's suicidal.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I stood last night with a fast food worker in Hartford, Connecticut, who earns $10-13 an hour. Some weeks he works 10 hours. Some weeks he works 25. He can't support his 16-year-old daughter, not understanding what he can earn in a month. And he's now in a state where the public service workers in Connecticut today face all the people that were paying fair share fees no longer having to invest in their union. And so we have to think about the impact on wages and benefits when the court keeps weakening our ability to both unite and create good jobs.
Mary Kay, what assignment can we give people today? What would people listening? What would you like to have them do today to support
We'd love
our
for
pushback?
people to make a sign wherever they are that says union and take a picture of themselves and post it on a Twitter feed, which is #union. They also can go to americaneedsunions.org and look at the events there. And we would love for people to join us in events that are happening across the country this Saturday. You can find it on a website that Move On is broadcasting all the events, because we think we need to stand together for families everywhere.
Indeed, indeed.
Also, take one with Martin Luther King, union organizer. Mandela, union organizer.
Mm-hmm.
These were heroes of collective bargaining.
Right, and we
That's
know
right.
we know there was no delineation between the civil rights struggle and the labor struggle. They all were, and it's important. Reverend Jackson just mentioned South Africa. Same thing in South Africa, and our unions here in America played a pivotal role in the end of apartheid, a pivotal role in the civil rights movement. If you all are watching us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube live now as we speak with Mary Kay, I got the hashtag up on the screen, union, with Reverend Jackson and me. Retweet this, share it, but take a picture of yourself holding up a sign that says union. Use the hashtag union all day and in the coming days so we can get organized and do what we need to do.
You know, Mark, in 1955, when the Montgomery bus boycott, and they were struggling for money. The churches were, bereft of money. The food workers, led by Addie White at that point, brought $10,000 to Montgomery. The first major contribution brought to that struggle was by unions.
Yeah.
Dr. King saw workers' right to organize is a civil right. It's a right as a workers' right to organize. It's indistinguishable. I cannot imagine the distinction between unions, workers organizing, and civil rights.
No.
It's indistinguishable.
Amen.
Amen. Mary Kay Henry, the president of SEIU, hashtag union, folks. Follow her at SEIU, at Mary Kay Henry. Mary Kay, thank you for joining us. We love you too. We're going to be right on the front lines with you, okay?
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Take care now. All right, folks,
All right.
we've got to get ready to take a quick break. How often do you think about your socks? If you're like most people, probably not much, but I recently discovered socks that changed the way I'll think about socks forever. They're called Bombas. Bombas are the most comfortable socks in the history of feet, made from premium cotton. Bombas stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and every pair comes with a built-in blister tab, innovative arch support, stay-up technology, and a seamless toe. With many colors, patterns, lengths, and styles, Bombas look great in the gym, at the office, and out on the town. Bombas are what feet daydream about, and for every purchase you make, Bombas donates a pair to someone in need. So keep cool, keep comfortable, and keep contributing with the best socks in the history of feet. Bombas. Buy your Bombas today at bombas.com/MIP and get 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/MIP for 20% off your first purchase. Bombas.com/MIP. We'll get another live report.
That's not Obama's, is it?
No, just Bombas. They just sound like if they name it Obama socks, they probably sell even more socks. Bombas, y'all ought to hear that. Reverend Jesse Jackson in the studio, 1:15. We'll be right back. Natasha Quiroga of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law will join us next with an update on what's happening in some of these detention centers. Don't go away. Sirius XM Progress 127. Join us on our stream, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Make it plain. Get woke. Get ready for impeachment. This is MIP. Everyone watching on our stream, use this hashtag right below Reverend Jackson and me. You can see it right there. Union. Okay? So please, man, please, sir.
Dr. King was a union organizer.
Yeah,
His last act on earth was organizing a union in Memphis.
that's right.
From jail, Mandela was a union organizer.
That's right.
Why? So workers get decent wages and workplace safety
Right.
and the right to be at the table. Without a union, workers cannot get to the table to argue their case.
Come back to me with my music, please. When you live in the country or in a small town, you know a few things the city types don't. Things like which back roads flood, the best fishing spots, the owner of the hardware store, and the county's best AAA quarterback. You also know the way things ought to be done. Dish was built to serve small town America, and because of that, they share your small town approach. Talk straight, deal fair, and most of all, listen. Dish knows that when you're out past the last cable line, you make even stronger connections, and so they strive to present real choices and provide real service. The kind that you don't just expect but deserve in small towns. You take care of each other, so let Dish take care of you with the latest technology, professional installation, better programming, and first-rate service from the retailer that lives in and supports your community. Dish listens. That's how they stay tuned in to you. I Am Somebody, as you all know, our theme song on Mondays when Reverend Jackson is on the phone. We're blessed though, to have him in studio on today. And Reverend Jackson joining us now from another great organization that you and I both support, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law.
Brilliant lawyer.
Indeed. Natasha Quiroga joins us now. Natasha, good morning to you. You're on with Reverend Jesse Jackson. How are you, Natasha?
Good morning. I'm good.
Good morning, Ms. Natasha. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
So you spent some time with impacted parents at the Port Isabel Service Processing Center facility?
Yes, I was. I spent 5 days at the Port Isabel Detention Center in Texas.
And you interacted with parents there, correct?
Yes. Our group of attorneys met with about 200 detainees, almost all of them who had been separated from their children.
And tell us what that was like.
Wow, it was a very emotional experience. The parents that we met with were just absolutely devastated because the majority of them had not even spoken to their children. And for some, it had been up to a month the last time they spoke to their child. For some, it averaged about 2 weeks that most had not been able to speak to their children. Many of them had no idea where their children were being held, and they were just desperate for information to find out more and desperate to be reunited with them again.
Mark, I was a bit hesitant because I just wanted to say Natasha is such a brilliant lawyer whose values makes her glow. I mean, to go out of your way because you care to help somebody you don't have to help. That's the America that's best, what Natasha's doing. Natasha, we thank you and congratulations again for being who you are.
Yeah, indeed, Natasha, thank you. So as you were interacting with these parents, and I'm sure they were emotional, it was a very emotional experience, but I'm sure some of them were also asking very practical questions like, what can I do? What's my recourse? How can I find my child, right? Some of them were asking that, weren't they?
Yes, all of them were.
Yeah.
Their first question was, when can I see my child again? And so we were there to provide a legal orientation, help them figure out how they could at least find their children. So we took down information from each parent who had been separated from their child, the child's name, date of birth, the date of the separation, and the location. And so our hope was that we would be able to connect them with their child. And we also work with the parents to submit request forms to request information about their child and to set up a phone call with their child. And we actually had some parents write letters that we would try to send to their children because as their only way of communication.
So what are the real options, though? I mean, I know you all were giving them legal advice, but what, if anything, can they do to expedite having their children returned to them?
Right. So parents are being forced into this terrible decision of either opting to self-deport in order to reunify with their child quickly, or being, that's one option, or going home and then going home to their home country where they face violence, persecution, and possibly even murder. So that's a horrible situation, and parents are really struggling with that decision because they know their children are suffering, being kept apart with them. We had one mother who, when she was able to speak with her 7-year-old daughter over the phone, the daughter was just crying and saying over and over again, "You don't love me anymore, Mommy. You don't love me anymore." And it broke. Yeah, it's awful. The children don't understand what's happening to them, and the parents can't even communicate with them to comfort them, and they don't have answers for them. And so the mother was absolutely devastated and just sobbing when she shared the story with us. And a lot of the parents have strong asylum claims, and it's difficult for them to make that decision. And as a part of the process, they have to pass what's called a credible fear interview, basically explaining why they are scared to return to their home country. But when you don't even know where your child is, you haven't even spoken to your child, you've been so traumatized by just the separation with your child, it's so difficult to express yourself, to explain the reasons why you cannot return to your home country.
What about the infants? You can't send them a letter. They can't talk with you. What about the state of the infants? That's even harder. The youngest child that we heard about was a 3-year-old. So there is the option to do video calls, though that has not happened with any of the parents that we spoke with. That's why some of the parents were drawing pictures. They drew pictures for their children. They wrote in quotes from the Bible, scripture, anything they could do to communicate with their children. But it's hard for the families, the mothers and the fathers. And I want to emphasize that it's not just mothers, it's fathers also, who are just heartbroken knowing that their children are suffering and they can't do anything about it. For a long time, part of what helped break the barrier in the southern part of our hemisphere was liberation theology. I don't hear enough from the ministers in that region and or the Pope, since almost all of them are Catholic.
Yeah, I'm not sure the response, but there are also individuals. I spoke to one father who was being targeted in his community because he was evangelical, and he was beaten, tied to a tree and beaten, and he's terrified of returning home, and he's terrified that he also won't be able to see his child again, who he has been separated from. So there's just it's just absolutely heartbreaking to talk to these mothers and fathers who have no idea when they'll be able to see their children again.
Well, what about his evangelical family? He had Franklin Graham in that group. Are they standing with them?
Well, it's difficult. So this individual actually speaks one of the indigenous languages in his native country, and so we had to attempt to find somebody who was be able to translate. With that, he did mention that he had family, but he doesn't have any family here who can help sponsor his child, his son. So that presents even more challenges, and it's hard for a lot of these individuals to be able to call home because they're able to, but you have to add money to your phone card, and a lot of them aren't able to do that, and a lot of their families back home have no idea that they are even in the detention center, so they can't contact them. So there's just a lot of challenges facing these mothers and fathers.
What can we do as an audience to help or be supportive, if at all, Natasha? What can we do?
I think, sharing the stories and really understanding that these are human beings. What is happening to these parents, it's inhumane, it's unjust, and we should share, the stories that they're facing. Volunteer, we we were able to see about 200 parents, but there's so many more. So if you're an attorney or paralegal, sign up on one of the organizations that are mobilizing volunteers. We're at Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, as a part of the Immigrant Justice Campaign, who's recruiting volunteer attorneys to go down to the detention centers and work with these individuals. And also, if you're a Spanish speaker, we're looking for interpreters. If you speak one of the indigenous languages in Guatemala, please let us know. And then donate money as well to many of the organizations locally on the ground who are providing amazing services but are completely overwhelmed. And then there's a rally, a Families Belong Together rally this Saturday in D.C. and then in many cities across the country. Come out and use your voice to raise awareness about this inhumane process that's happening.
All right. Thank you, Natasha. Lawyers Committee, follow them on Twitter. Natasha, thanks. So what's the website again for Lawyers Committee?
It's lawyerscommittee.org.
All right. Thank you, Natasha Quiroga, with us, folks. Have a great day, Natasha, and give everyone at Lawyers Committee my regards, okay?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Please do the same for me, please.
Thank you, Natasha. Take care now. All right, folks, we're going to get ready to wrap things up here. Hope everybody has a good day. Don't forget to tweet a picture or use Instagram of yourself with union on the hashtag union. We want to support our unions. iwillvote.com. Go there and make sure that you are registered to vote and that you are in good standing. Honored that you came in.
Dr. King was a union organizer. He died
was.
on that agenda.
Ask me.
Mandela was a union organizer because they understood the only way workers to get to the table was to get there collectively.
Yeah.
They own their labor. They own they co-op. They connect with their neighbors' labor, the union, and that's real powerful working common people.
Indeed. Dr. King gave his life in an AFSCME struggle, and he said 1199 was his favorite union, as a matter of fact. Honored you came in 2 days in a row, man.
Well, thank you for allowing me to, sir.
Oh, no. Thank you for being here. I'm not worthy. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, folks. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.